The U.S. Supreme Court will begin hearing arguments this week on the legality of broad tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump on South Korea and other countries. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he's optimistic that the court will decide in the administration's favor and pointed to China's rare earth export curbs to justify the tariff measures. Our Seung-jae explains more.
The U.S. Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on Wednesday on the legality of broad tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump on South Korea and other countries. The case comes just days after Seoul and Washington wrapped up trade negotiations, adding new weight to the outcome. Lower courts have already ruled that Trump's tariffs violated U.S. law, but the final verdict remains uncertain, given the Supreme Court's conservative 6-3 majority. At the center of the dispute is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, or IEEPA, which allows presidents to take economic action during national emergencies. The question is whether Trump overstepped his authority when he invoked that law to impose what he called reciprocal tariffs. In April, Trump declared a national emergency, claiming that America's chronic trade deficits posed a threat to both national security and economic stability. He then imposed sweeping tariffs under IEEPA, setting a 25% duty on South Korean exports, which was later reduced to 15% after Seoul pledged a $350 billion investment in the United States. Small businesses in a dozen Democratic-leaning states sued, arguing that IEEPA does not grant presidents unilateral power to set tariffs, which the U.S. Constitution assigns to Congress. The lower courts agreed, ruling that Trump's executive order overreached the limits of presidential authority. Now, the Supreme Court must decide two key questions. Did Congress effectively delegate its tariff-making power to the president under the IEEPA? And can a trade deficit be considered a national emergency? Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent turned his attention to China on Sunday, calling Beijing an unreliable partner in certain trade areas. Speaking on Fox News Sunday, Bessent said he was surprised when China threatened to restrict exports of rare earth minerals, adding that Washington has plenty of things we can hold back to.
And we could threaten the tariffs again, and we have plenty of things that we can hold back too. Over the next 12 and 24 months, we're going to be moving at warp speed.
Bessent also expressed optimism as the Supreme Court prepares to hear arguments on Trump's tariff policy and the limits of presidential power under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Seung-jae, ArirangNews.